I am very fidgety, so I'm going to also sit. Can everyone hear me? The acoustics are crazy. Is that okay? All right. Ever since I can remember, I wanted to be a dancer when I grew up. Here I am at age 5 in a costume for my first dance production as a hoppin' bunny. From this early age, it was clear to me that the very best part of being a dancer was wearing a fantastic costume. I sailed down the customary path of aspiring dancer, one lovely costume to the next, learning to sew and draw along the way, until my senior year of college when I was charged with producing my BFA thesis concert. I went the extra mile and designed and constructed the costumes for my 16 dancers. Here you see the design for Fallen Leaves in the Forest of Misfit Ballerinas. The piece was entitled Two Portraits of December, and it served as my magnum opus, launching my unintentional side career as a costume designer. This is me channeling Loie Fuller in my 30-foot diameter silk skirt for that concert. I don't quite recall how I afforded all that silk. I think I used my grocery budget. Quickly thereafter, I began making costumes for other students. This is a concept sketch for a dance by a fellow BFA candidate. My mom was living in New York at the time, and I visited her to shop for fabric in the garment district, which was fabulous. I wish the photos we had taken were not in black and white. The costumes were all rust in color, in varying tones and textures. It's coming soon. They were a blast to dance in. I kept all the little scraps of fabric left over, planning to make a quilt someday. That day never came. That was the beginning of a very bad problem with hoarding lots of little scraps of fabric and where to store them. I was also commissioned to make costumes for university faculty members. This next photo is from a set of Elizabethan-esque ruffs I made for the department head, Gay DeLange. May she rest in peace. The dance was highly aerobic, and it was quite a challenge to keep the collars upright with all the jumping and leaping, but that was the point. We were supposed to be inhibited by our garments. I made a lot of costumes for that department head, Gay. In this piece, we were Greek statues come to life, so to speak. This here is Nike. I bought up some more silk and hand-painted it this time to resemble rose marble. Of course, the effect is lost in black and white. I need to get much better at documenting my work. I began branching out away from the university and into the greater Ann Arbor community. I had an impossibly small budget to design and build a production of Carnival of the Animals. There were no trips to New York, no silk, and they ended up looking terrible. The drawings, though, I adore. I have dozens of these drawings, songbirds, cats, apes, turtles, and I need to get them framed. I branched out even further into the theater. Word was now out, and I was hired to make the fairy costumes for A Midsummer Night's Dream. I was also cast in the role of Cobweb. This is a sketch of Oberon and his three pucks. We rehearsed and performed in a park, and being in that environment every day was pivotal to the design and construction process of this fairy world. The finished costumes resembled fabric peeling off of our skin. I used a lot of cotton-lycra blends, pantyhose, floral spray, hand painting on sheer fabric, and also on the actors' bodies. I thought, I kind of like this job. Flash forward to living in Chattanooga, post-upstarting Needlov's Breadworks with John Sweet, post-2 complicated pregnancies, post-daughter with serious medical needs, to re-engaging as my path as an artist. Contrapasso Dance Company commissioned me to make some cage dresses. There was no budget, and I didn't care one little bit. The structure of the skirts was made with 2 different sizes of hula hoops. I couldn't find any good fabric in the right colors in this town, so I got something cheap at Walmart and painted it with silk floral spray. These were a labor of love and a necessary step towards getting my legs back underneath me. I did as much work for Contrapasso as I could while they were around. May they also rest in peace. This next photo is horrible because I took it. I designed the costumes and that giant bird cage enclosing the low trapeze bar. The birdman's feathers were made from old stained cotton dishcloths torn into perfect little squares. The bankers wore thrift store suits that were dissected and reassembled into a more modern and danceable silhouette. Though note, wool is not a good choice for dancers. I got back into dancing and eventually landed as a gig as a guest choreographer for the Chattanooga Ballet. Naturally, I designed the costumes as well. This was a little different because someone else was going to make them, and there was a budget to work with, so I chose hand-dyed silk, of course. They turned out to be absolutely gorgeous, and I need to get a photo of the finished costumes from Bob Willie. Now, word was really out, and UTC approached me to design the costumes for Shakespeare's A Winter's Tale. There was a budget, but hardly enough time. This one here, though, the character of Time, turned out especially well. There were many students available to cut those hundreds, no, thousands, of 30-degree points that covered her cloak. I spent one very long night sewing row after row of these points onto the finished garment. Grace here loved wearing it and worked with it beautifully. She brought it to life, a moving, speaking, shimmering sculpture. Here and there, I've tucked in little projects. My friend Cinnamon commissioned a choreographer from New York, Mark Dendy, to make a series of dance solos on her. She commissioned me to make the costumes. I found a fabric shop in Atlanta that carries nice cloth at reasonable prices and emailed ideas back and forth between Mark in New York and Cinnamon here in Chattanooga. That was a lot of fun. About a month after I finished that project, Cinnamon called me in a panic, needing a gray and yellow dress for a production she was working on with the UTC music department. There was no money, of course, and no time, I think about 3 days, so I pulled an old silk skirt from my closet that was too big and stained, and I cut it up to make a little pretty dress for her. Since I never throw away any bit of fabric, I had enough leftover yellow silk from a previous project to piece together the lining. This past December, I wrote, choreographed, costumed, and made the sound score for the aftermath section of Ensemble Theater's Gods and Disasters. I made the costumes with old clothes and all of those scraps of fabric I had been hoarding for 13 years. I used them all. This one here also had strips of dried latex paint sewn into the sleeves. It was supposed to look like blood. And currently, I have costumes on stage, actually at this moment, at the former Nico's Southside Grill in Theater for the New South's production of Nora. This is the Edwardian corset in construction. I'm out of time, so you have to look it up on Facebook. We've had 2 great reviews in the past 2 days, and tickets are selling out fast. So hurry up and get yours. Thank you. Phew!